friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be talking about the gorgeous Philodendron Mamei that I have right here. Look at her. Isn't she just absolutely stunning? Really quick editing Emma here. I just wanted to hop on here quickly because I have recently actually been like questioning the ID of the plant that I have in this video that I'm talking about as my Mamei. I was sold it as a Mamei like 2 years ago from Ecuador, and so I took that as what it was, but I think it might be a Plowmanii. They are both very similar plants with green heart-shaped leaves and silver splotches that are crawlers, and they originate from the same parts of the world, so their care is very similar. So I would take the care instructions in this video and apply them to both. If I had it as a Plowmanii, I would have been treating it the exact same way. And so I just wanted to make that little disclaimer. If you know how to distinguish between the two of them, let me know. I have looked at so many pictures of both Mameis and Plowmanii and seen that my plant looks like pictures of both, but also looks like pictures of neither. So it's a bit on the confusing side, and I think they're commonly missold as each other. So it's quite possible that you also have mixed them up or being sold one incorrectly, but like I said, their care is pretty much the same, so I would be treating them the same either way. And so whatever this plant is, a Mamei or Plowmanii, you can take this video and use this sort of care instructions, because I'd be doing the same thing for both. So yeah, let me know if you have more information about this or can like accurately ID this plant, because it would be good to know, just for my own personal knowledge, whether or not I actually have a Mamei. But yeah, so keep that in mind as you're watching the rest of this video, and let me know down below if you have any more information. I am going to be telling you all of my care tips and tricks on how I keep this one happy and healthy. So stick around and we will get into that in a second. Before I do, I just want to say, if you are new here and you don't know me already, hi, my name is Emma and I make houseplanting content all over the internet. So if you want to follow along with my houseplanting journey and maybe learn something along the way, stick around, watch some of my videos, and subscribe to my channel. If you're not new here, thanks for coming back. I appreciate you as well. And I hope you enjoy these care tips too. So yeah, let's get into it. The Philodendron Mamei is a creeping philodendron or a crawling philodendron in its natural habitat in the rainforest of Ecuador. It like crawls along the rainforest floor. They are known for their gorgeous like dark green heart-shaped leaves with these like silver splotches on them, and sometimes it's referred to as a silver cloud. But I've also heard that like a Philodendron Mamei silver cloud is a type of Philodendron Mamei, so it can get a little bit confusing. I think this typical one is just the Mamei and the silver cloud is a bit rounder, but I'm not too sure, and things are often like confusingly labeled. But it's a stunning plant and I don't think you could go wrong with either of them. I personally got this one in an import from Ecuador, so this has come from its like actual homeland, which is pretty crazy. I've had it for like, oh my goodness, nearly 2 years now. Gosh, it feels like it's been forever that I've had this one, but I've had it for a while, and I have, as you can see, been keeping it fairly happy and healthy. Philodendron Mameis thrive the best in a sort of bright indirect light. In their natural habitat, like I said, they are crawling on the floor, and so they're being, for the most part, shaded from any natural sun. They might get some like stippled or dappled sunlight throughout the day, and that'll be fine, or like early morning, very late afternoon sunlight is fine, but prolonged periods of hot afternoon sun could be really bad for these leaves. They are quite thin, and so they can get sunburned quite easily, so try to keep them out of like long hours of harsh afternoon sun. You also don't want to be putting them in too dark of a spot. It is definitely a balance. If they are in too dark of a spot, they can grow slower and become leggy, like searching for the light. So it is something that you do kind of need to get right, and a little bit of trial and error is fine for it. I personally have this one in not the brightest of spots. It is like a meter to the side of a window, but it's kind of a really dark corner. I sometimes put a grow light on it when I can remember. It's one that I don't have a automatic timer for. I should probably put it on one just so I can let that area have more bright light, because I definitely think it would thrive in slightly more light. You can see like it's getting a bit, I wouldn't say it's leggy, I just think it's a bit like tall and awkward. Overall, I think it's a pretty happy plant, and I don't think it dislikes the spot it is in, so it's fine. I tend to water mine when the soil is like 75 to 100% dry, so like all the way down. Though I do err on the side of underwatering personally. You could probably water it from like 50% down, but mine's in quite a shallow pot, and so I don't want it to just be like sitting in too much water. Like inside here, this bit isn't very deep, even though this is a lot deeper. So I'm just trying to be careful and not keep it too wet or water it too soon before it needs it. But I do highly recommend that you go off of a soil dryness schedule instead of a like time-based schedule. So I wouldn't say water once a week or anything like that, because it will vary from season to season depending on the light outside, the humidity in your home, whether or not your central heating's on. Like, I don't think there's a steadfast rule you can say time-wise about watering these ones, so stick to soil dryness. You can either use your finger and just poke it in, or a moisture meter and test to see whether or not the soil is dry. If it is dry, give it some water. If it's not, wait a couple days and try testing it again before giving it some more. This sort of watering technique will reduce the risk of overwatering, which is a very common cause of houseplant deaths, so it is probably the best way to go about watering. Otherwise, you could suffer from things like root rot and plant death. So stick to soil dryness. Mameis like their temperatures to be fairly warm. Their ideal is between 18 and 27 degrees Celsius or 65 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Your home should be okay. I know my home does dip a little bit lower than that during like some parts of winter. I would ideally suggest you don't let it get below 12 degrees Celsius or 55 Fahrenheit, because that can cause damages to the plant and cause it to stop growing. Typically, your home shouldn't get that low. If it gets that low for a very brief period of time, that's okay, but you don't want long extended periods of cold, because it will harm the plant and cause like things like frost damage, even though it's not like quite frost temperatures, but it'll cause damage. Cold damage is not fun with these. Like I said, they've got thin leaves, and so they can be a bit more sensitive to things like that. Because mameis originate from the rainforest, I try and mimic that sort of humid situation in my home around it. Their ideal is between like 60 and 80% humidity. Luckily, my home is fairly high, 50+% at all times pretty much, so I don't need to do too much, but I do group it with other houseplants, and that will naturally boost the humidity. You can also add humidity by putting it on a pebble tray, or if you've got a lot of plants that like quite a humid environment, maybe investing in something like a humidifier is a good option for you, because they can give a broader sense of humidity throughout the room rather than just like isolating it to one spot. So keep it humid, it will like you better for it. Mameis are not super heavy feeders. They don't need a lot. I think I probably fertilize mine every other water at the moment, but I'm a heavy fertilizer. I use liquid gold leaf fertilizer, which you can use a little bit more frequently than some other fertilizers because it is quite kind to your plants. That being said, you will probably be fertilizing more often in the spring and summer, the growing season, than you will in the winter. If your plant stops growing in the winter as well, I would suggest stopping fertilizing altogether. But if yours is still putting out new leaves, there's no harm in continuing to feed it because it is still using that nutrients. In homes like mine, where I have quite an artificial environment with grow lights and humidity and all of that stuff, my plant tends to keep growing, so I continue to fertilize it. But I would kind of drop it down maybe like once a month instead of like every other water. I would also suggest that if you're using like an all-purpose fertilizer, that you reduce it down to half strength, because it can be quite harsh on your roots. If you're using a houseplant focused fertilizer, it should be fine, but anything that's like for indoors and outdoors, be very careful with the dosage, because it can get trapped in the pot and you can over fertilize your plant, give it burns and stuff like that. So it's best to err on the side of caution and use half strength, but if you're using something like Houseplant Focus, like Liquid Gold Leaf is, then you could just use full strength as is. A sort of chunky, rich, well-draining soil is ideal for your mameis. They're not too picky with their soil. I tend to use the Monstera and Philodendron soil from Soil Ninja, which is cocoa coir, worm castings, perlite, pumice, orchid bark, zeolite, activated charcoal, like all of these really great things to keep it nice and drainy, keep the drainage nice and high and allow it to like go through nicely and not hold on to too much moisture. If you were just using normal houseplant soil, I would probably suggest adding something like perlite or orchid bark or something that can like actually add extra drainage into it to make sure that it is draining it quickly and not holding on to too much water. Because mameis are creepers or crawlers, you're probably going to want a sort of trough pot or a rectangular shaped pot. You can see I've got a long one here and I'm actually at the very end, so I'm going to need to do something about this one fairly soon. But you're gonna want something long so it can crawl essentially along the top of the soil, because that's how it's naturally gonna grow in the like wilderness. They can climb, so you could try and give them a pole, but it might not be their preferred method. I think I have heard of some mameis be specific climbers, but I've had great success with having mine just creeping along this pot. So I'd say grow them as a creeper if you possibly can. I know trough pots and rectangular pots are quite expensive, so do what you can. I'm sure there's ways to DIY them, I just don't know them yet. Maybe I should look into that. You're probably only gonna need to repot your plant when it gets to the end of the trough. I could repot this one into something bigger and longer and give it more space that way, but I don't think I am going to quite yet. I think I might chop and prop it, which I'll talk about in a second. But you can see that it is very happy in there and it's got some nice roots, beautiful pink ones. And drainage holes are super important. No matter what pot you're using, you want to make sure that it has some sort of drainage holes to like let the water escape and not pool at the bottom. Unless you were like extremely good at watering your plants, drainage holes are pretty much essential. Propagation of mamei is actually quite easy because they're kind of rooting all along the way. If it is creeping along some soil, it's rooting from every single node down into the soil. So it's kind of like self-propagating. So in order to propagate something like this, I can just cut it with some clean scissors or a knife and let that like wound callus over. Once it's calloused after a few hours or like a day, I can put it back into the same pot or soil or anything like that and let it continue on growing. If yours has gotten to a point where it's no longer putting roots into the soil, or if you've got a small one, or if you've got it climbing and it's not got roots into a pole or anything like that, you can propagate it before it has aerial roots. Just make sure you're cutting below a node and then putting that node into the propagation medium of choice. Water, perlite, sphagnum moss. I'd personally probably use sphagnum moss because that's my favorite method to propagate philodendrons like this, but it's really up to you. And then once it's got like sort of secondary roots, or its roots are branching out, then you can put it into the medium of choice and let it be a happy camper. Unfortunately, mameis are toxic to humans and pets, so do not eat your plant. Do not let your kids eat your plant. Do not let your pets eat your plant. Don't eat this plant because it can cause gastrointestinal issues and we don't want that. And it'll also make it not look as nice. So don't let anyone eat your plant. Keep it out of reach of the pets and the children, just for their safety and your plants. So that is it. That is how I care for my beautiful mamei plant. Even though mine is a little bit sprawly, I freaking love this thing and I am so proud of how far it has come. It is like, it's getting so big now and I'm so excited to see how it goes when I do end up propagating it. Probably just gonna cut it and then put it back in the same pot, so I have two crawling along the same pot, but we will see down the line. Before I sign off, I want to say a big thank you to the newest member of the Good Growing family, Lizzie Bullock. Thank you so much for joining. If any of you are interested in joining my Good Growing family over on Patreon, it is only £3 or about $4 a month, and you get so much bonus content, live sessions with me, you get to pick some of my videos, and so much more. So head over there if that's something you're interested in. The link is down below in the description. Of course, no pressure, but it does help me make this sort of content for you. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up down below and leave a comment on any other houseplants you'd like me to talk about in the future, or any other houseplanty things. Let me know. And don't forget to subscribe for more. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!